Spiritual Bullshit with Tigmonk and Maya Lila. Enjoy!
Hello and welcome to Spiritual Bullshit. My name's Tiger Singleton, aka Tigmonk, and my friend
Maya Lila. Hello.
So, we had a fantastic hike yesterday.
We did.
We went up to Lower Table Rock, hung out on top for a little bit, and really enjoyed the present moment of it all.
And the breeze and the smoke-free air.
Yeah, it was kind of like the breeze I felt was just kind of just taking away every concern.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that little dance up there.
When I like the wind for that reason, for me it's almost a physical reminder of spirit. That the wind is, spirit or a representation of spirit. And you can't see it, but you can feel it.
Right.
And it's something, the wind, but it's not really anything.
Yeah, I had that same thought. It was like a great reflection of what spirit is.
Yeah.
I can't see you, I can't hold on to you, but yet I feel you there. I feel you touching me somehow.
And everyone feels it. Like the wind travels around the world.
Yeah.
It touches all people in all places, like around, there's no borders or limitations to it, and it moves across the whole planet.
It's kind of like it's one wind.
Yeah.
That touches everyone.
Yeah, because it isn't like there's, I guess some places have different winds, like Santa Ana winds, but the wind is just really one entity.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And it's like no matter, you can't divide it.
Yeah.
It doesn't care about your Oregon and California border.
Yeah.
It's like it's just moving.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Well, speaking of, what do you want to talk about today?
I liked yesterday, there's something you said yesterday. Now I can't remember what
About
it was.
topic idea?
There's a topic idea, but then there was also just part of the conversations we had. What was the topic idea?
The topic idea we discussed was the silly ideals
Yes,
that we
ideals.
have as human beings. And then, we talked about so much.
We did.
Which always just seems like the same conversation.
It is, in a way. Doubt and trust and craziness and truth.
The mantra.
Oh, yes, the mantra.
Yeah, which was, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but everything's gonna be okay.
Everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, it is funny. I posted that on Facebook last night. It's like the most popular post I've ever had. People just started liking that shit right away.
Yeah. Well, it resonates. And that's the thing is, like, you might feel like you're the only one saying that as your mantra, but pretty much everybody else is too.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, I've been saying that to myself all week. Like, I'm in the same place.
I feel like it's just so sincere. In a way, it like cuts through like the spiritual persona.
Yeah.
And it's just like, no, real life, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Yeah.
But again, everything's okay.
That might have been what I wanted to talk about, was the thing about stories and how we create these stories, especially around spirituality, that make us feel like we're in control. Like, the law of attraction.
Yeah, that's right.
Or whatever spiritual stuff you come up with to understand the mystery of reality and feel like you're, there's solar flares, or there's planets and that's why my shit's all fucked up, or that's why I'm crying today. And we create these stories that might have some truth in the moment, but they're never always true.
Yeah. Well, it seems like they just go in line with the human game.
Yeah.
Which is to tell stories about everything.
Yeah.
And find some sense of comfort in the story. And so in that, because it's like, for me, I'm not one that's involved in the whole astrology and the whole moving of the stars, even though I think it's magnificent and beautiful and all of that. It's just not part of my conditioning to stay up to date on that. But I have a lot of friends that are. And I appreciate the beauty that says, even though I have no interest, I can see how that's, valid for somebody else.
And it gives meaning. It can give meaning or some form of understanding to things that maybe aren't understandable, really.
Yeah, well, it's like any story, even teaching, it just points to something.
Yeah.
And so whatever the story is, it's not true, but it's pointing to something that's more real inside.
Yeah.
And one can't say that their story is more true than another. It's like, it's all story, it's all bullshit, and it's all pointing to something much more real.
Yeah.
Even though some of us don't want to hear that.
Yeah. Well, because when you take away the story, that can be scary. Because then what is there? Like, who am I if I don't have my story of myself? Or how do I understand things if the story is not true?
Well, that points to something that's really profound in the way of moving beyond all story.
Yeah.
To see that, and I think that's where we kind of lose our minds sometimes.
Yeah.
We go through an awakening experience like that, where it's like, holy shit, everything just collapsed.
Yeah.
I can't run to anything.
Yeah.
and it completely disorients your entire worldview.
Yeah.
And
well, it's almost like stories related to time and like moving through time, because you have your past and you have your future story and your story of yourself and all that. And if that disappears, then you're just present. And it's like, whoa, like I've had that experience where it's very intense and like I've lost all story. And then in ways it's hard to relate to other people too. Yeah. Of like we were saying, people want to know the story of your relationship or what's going on. Tell me the story. And it's like, well, the story's limiting and it's not going to be entirely true. Yeah. So why even bother sometimes?
Well, that kind of reminds me of like when I'm hanging out with somebody and, you know, there's like silence or whatever, and I start thinking about what should I talk about or what should I share. And it's like I just see the story. It's like, no, that's not true. No, that's not true. And it's like I don't even want to really engage it because there's a hint of victimhood or hint of separation. Yeah. And it's like, because we tend to do that when we get together. We kind of talk about shit.
Yeah. We tell stories.
Yeah, we tell stories about maybe how disadvantaged we are or whatever. And I notice a tendency in myself just to make conversation that wants to share something. And, but it's often where I'm just like, no, I'll just enjoy the silence. Yeah. You know, and do that.
Yeah, I've noticed that with you and I, even when we hang out sometimes with other people, I feel like we're often much quieter. Yeah. And just kind of present. And I can appreciate, like talking a lot about stuff when you feel like it, but I also enjoy sometimes just being quiet and listening and being present. And like, of course, like listening if other people are talking, but just being present and not talking all the time.
Yeah, and that's something that I really enjoy too, is like quiet space with another human being that's just as comfortable in the silence. Yeah. It's like taking a long road trip with somebody. There can be the tendency to say, oh, we got to fill up the space. Yeah. But to connect with another human being without words and just an appreciation of whatever you want to call now, I enjoy that. I enjoy not having to feel like I have to say something when there isn't really anything authentically that I feel like engaging.
And I used to feel like that. I used to feel like I had to say stuff or entertain people or make people feel comfortable or, all these stories I had about. And I used to talk a lot and all the time and not really listen so much. Yeah. And that's definitely something I've practiced, is listening without thinking about what I'm going to say.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's lots of healing there, too, in just embracing the silence. Especially with another person, if they're going through something or having a hardship. Just being there and holding space without even a need to inquire about what they're going through or figure it out. Yeah. Just to be there. I even find for myself, it's like when I'm going through a space that may not be so comfortable, I don't really want people to try and figure out what's going on with me, because I don't even fucking know. Yeah. It's like there's this collapse of the mental game of trying to figure out, oh, what is this? Yeah.
How can I fix it? How can I get rid of it? How can I change it?
Reaching for a story of why is this the way it is, rather than releasing the story and embracing the present moment situation.
Yeah, sometimes it's useful to inquire and dig into things and kind of go down that path, but I had that experience the other day of where I was feeling this emotion, which was kind of a sadness, but I wasn't really sure what it was about, and it was just this very strong emotion. And so my friend was asking me questions about it, but it was taking me out of the experience of it, and I felt like what I needed was not to try to figure it out or explain it, but just to be with that feeling and not try to get away from it. Yeah. And so it was an interesting, sometimes, like I said, sometimes that's what I feel is useful, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is useful for somebody to ask you, like, well, where is this in your body? Or why do you think you're feeling this?
Which is funny, because it points to the insanity of one solution. Yeah. For it's like, how do I deal with this? I don't know. Yeah. You'll just have to get intimate with it as it's happening and see what's best for you.
Yeah. And be with the unknown. Yeah. Of like, I don't know what you should do or what you shouldn't do, and maybe there's not an answer.
That's one reason why I tend to maybe appreciate the times I go through where I'm just totally clueless, is it reminds me that this whole teaching thing or sharing thing isn't about an answer, isn't about figuring something out for somebody else. It's really just about me speaking to my own space, and if other people enjoy, then that's fine. Yeah. But there's nothing about it that wants to like raise me above or below. It's just really, I'm just singing a song.
Yeah, you're telling a story.
Yeah, I'm telling a story.
Essentially,
it's
of your
pointing
experience.
to something that you may not resonate, you may not see, but it just doesn't matter. Yeah. And the more that I have this movement inside that wants it to be a certain way, then the more difficult it becomes. just so funny because that's just such a reflection about life as a whole.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Yeah, I had today somebody sent me a message and they had a couple questions for me. You know, they wanted my wisdom. And so it's like, oh, give me some time to answer your questions. And then I was like, wait a minute. I'm not going to answer her questions because these are her questions. I don't know her answers. Yeah. So I can share my experience with these questions that I've asked myself, but I can't answer her questions for her, which is something that, again, like I used to be like, oh, yes, I'll tell you the answers. And it's like, no, I have my own answers, but not yours.
Yeah. Yeah, we tend to want to do that, to believe that there's something out there that has the answer, which may be a constant movement searching for a new story. Yeah. And I see that in my own human experience, how, well, we were talking about this yesterday too, how the present moment is just so the same. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's just always the same. Yeah. And the only thing that's changing is a mental movement of story. Mm-hmm. It's like the only difficulty that we ever have exists in the mind. Yeah. Telling a story about how disadvantaged we are or how difficult something is. Oh, we were talking about how, you know, if you walk up the mountain, you have to walk back down the mountain. Mm-hmm. And it's not really difficult. It's not really hard. It's just one present moment step at a time. Mm-hmm. It's just the present moment, no matter what's happening. And it's the personality of the self or the mentally created person self that feels like it has to figure it out. Yeah. And I find that for my own human experience, that's the difficulty, is when the ego self feels like it needs to understand what's going on. Or label it, or judge it, or fight against it. Yeah. So that it has some sense of security. Yeah. And it's like inside of me, it feels like it builds up to where it gets to the point of, I just don't fucking care anymore. Yeah. I don't want to figure this out. Because there's nothing to figure out. Yeah. It's just mind shit.
Yeah. It's all fake anyway.
Yeah, it's just mind shit. Yeah.
Like, if you can use logic and it's a fun game, but if you go to the end of logic, it just comes back to where it started and it's a circle. Yeah. And so when you see that, you're like, oh, it's all bullshit. It's all a story. Mm-hmm. And not to say that you could never use logic, but just that fundamental realization once again that it's not what you're talking about. It's not what actually is in this present moment. It's circles around it created by words and thoughts and stories.
Which is interesting because it seems like our whole world functions from that space of logic and mind.
Definitely. Crap. Which is not real.
No, it's not.
That's why it's so, I feel like it's so weird. People are like, why is the world like this? And why is it so hard? And it's like, well, because we're playing this kind of fucked up game of like all illusion and lies. And like the truth is just the present moment. And we so don't live in the present moment. Yeah. And we're talking about too, that divergence from humans probably used to when they lived in the jungle and they didn't have houses and they were just outdoors and they were present in the rain or in the cold or in the warm, and it was just what was. Yeah. But now we've created this comfort level for ourselves, and so if it changes, then we're taken out of, we're not really in the now, we're in like a fake now. Yeah. We try to keep comfortable and secure.
Yeah. We get our little story of suburbia. Yeah. In a way. Yeah. Oh, this is what it's supposed to be like. Well, yeah, we did I did a talk at the Zen Center last week, and it was pretty much, older people, specifically 3 older women that were in their 50s, talking about their upbringing and how it was projected onto them of what a family was and what it's going to be like when you have children, all referencing Leave It to Beaver. And how all of that was just so destroyed for them. Their whole idea of the fantasy of raising kids and being married and playing their role as mother and wife, and it never lived up to that.
Yeah, and I saw the destruction of that as a very young child with my parents. I saw that it's not working out like Leave It to Beaver or like television at all, and so I think I saw that early, and so I definitely rebelled against that in a way. I was like, well, then I'm never getting married, and I haven't gotten married, and I've created kind of my own life, and I feel like by rejecting those illusions in the stories, because I watched a lot of TV, by knowing that was all fake, given my experience of it, it wasn't so painful for me to go through the reality of it, because I was more able to be present with what was actually occurring. Yeah,
you weren't looking to fulfill that fantasy.
Yeah. Which is painful.
It is painful.
Fantasies break.
Okay, so let's speak to that. When we find ourselves in this situation where everything collapses, it's like we can either go back to trying to build another story, because there's a tendency to do that. It's like, okay, I'm going to start over and build a story that I think I like or is going to make me secure.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, where do you go when you realize there's nowhere to go?
I guess in my experience, when everything collapsed for me, I went back to spirituality and like really went inward and figuring out my own stuff, and I definitely turned away. Like, I wasn't interested in building that fantasy anymore, or that illusion. And after a little bit of time, like, I sold everything. I sold my car. I started traveling and like living this lifestyle that some people are like, oh, what are you doing? You're not accomplishing anything.
Yeah.
But it's definitely my own path, you know, which I feel is difficult, but it resonates with my truth, which is more along the lines of like living in the present moment and just working through all of my fears and all of my desires for security and comfort and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just really giving up all of that and returning to the present moment and being sincere in, well, what is actually resonant, or what do I actually desire, from a space of authenticity. I mean, and that being, I'm not desiring another story. I'm desiring what's really true. And I want to see the realness of life rather than creating another fantasy.
I think it's that game of just letting go. Like letting go of more and more and more. Your definitions of yourself, your relationships, everything. Just letting it all go.
I can see that in my own experience. Just the constant letting go. And even now, it's like, oh, you say that. It's like, oh, shit, I can see where I'm holding on to such and such. Yeah. But it's like the most subtle holding on.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is the point as it brings it to the surface. It forces you to look at it to see what you're clinging to, and it is the most innocent thing to cling to a story or cling to an idea that says, I want it to be this way because then I will feel safe. But life is trying to strip you of that. At the same
that's
time.
what I feel like. Definitely, there's that movement of life, or us choosing to be stripped of all of that.
Yeah. And so in that, I feel completely dysfunctional as a human being.
Yeah.
But it's the most beautiful dysfunction because you also see that it's the most real.
Yeah.
That I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I don't know how to be like everyone else.
Yeah.
I don't know how to be a super productive rock star. And be successful. And, you know, I can't make a list and be like, okay, this is what I'm going to do with my life. And then just decide, and then that's the end of that, you know? And maybe there are some people that works for, but for myself, it's just coming to terms with the inability to control myself in that way. But I also see that my desire to control that is only sprung from wanting to control the story.
Yeah.
Because I want to see myself this way.
Yeah.
And if I can see myself this way, then I won't have to worry.
Yeah.
But of course the truth is I don't have to worry anyway.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wow. That's such a fantastic stripping of everything.
It is. We're strippers.
Ooh. Such fun. My goodness.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, because we're both in our 30s, and so it'll be interesting to see where we're at in our 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like it's progression. Not that we're doing this to get somewhere, but I feel like this stripping away, you know, you continue doing it on more and more subtle levels, and you get freer on other levels, and you get more aligned with your own truth. And so I feel like both of us going through this movement of leaving the inauthentic and going towards what's authentic for us will eventually bear fruit in some way.
Yeah, I see that it always does.
Yeah.
I mean, we're always going through this process of breaking through the shell and seeing more light. And every time, I mean, looking back, it's like, thank you that I went through that. So I could experience the joy that's being felt. And then when I come back to this point of trying to break out of the shell, it's like, fuck, I gotta do this again. But at the same time, it's like, I remember what happens every time.
Yeah, that it always works out.
Yeah, it always works out. And there's something, you know, fantastic to be seen that is, again, beyond the facade, beyond the story, that's way more real and authentic. And so there's just, you know, a quiet invitation that says, Tiger, chill the fuck out and let life be life.
Well, it also inspires people, because the people that inspired us are the ones that broke out of their shells and became more authentic. And so in our attempts to do that for ourselves, even if we don't know what we're doing and we're like, what the fuck is going on in our lives, other people see what we're doing and they get it, they feel it. And so then they ask us questions, like, oh, like, how did you do this? And it's like, well, this is what I did, not knowing what I was doing at the time, and this is how it worked out. Oh, so use this as an inspiration for yourself if you want to, and give it a shot, and it'll all work out, even though it's terrifying.
It cracks me up because you say, I did what I did without knowing what I did.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a great kind of reflection that no one has the answer.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a... like an aware doing.
Yeah.
It was life already doing.
Yeah.
And then I told a story about it after. I saw what happened. Yeah. And so it's like from my own experience, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Or to, it's like people come to a talk thinking that I'll know how to do it. Mm-hmm. And we see even lots of teachers, they'll have a little plan or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's not really it.
Yeah.
That's just a playful opportunity for you to distract yourself, maybe. Distract yourself. Distract yourself from the mental bullshit.
Yeah.
So that you can find something, below that. And that's kind of like what I feel when I do satsang, is that it's so not about what's being talked about. It's about allowing the mind to calm down.
Yeah.
And the things that I communicate are really just appeasing the mind to such an extreme that it just stops. And then you're able to recognize what exists beyond the mind and see that as more real. And then as you see that as more real, there's just the invitation right there. It's like, well, what do you want? Do you want the mental chaos or do you want the reality? And right now, which is that you aren't anything. You aren't more important. You're just here. And that's terribly unexciting to the ego.
Yeah, to the mind that wants stories and answers and conflict and drama and stuff. Yeah, what you're saying makes a lot of sense, because a lot of time the spiritual teachings are this paradox where like people have a question and they expect you're going to say one thing and then you say the opposite in a way, and then it kind of collapses the logic again. Where it just shows you like none of this is real and it doesn't make any sense. And the opposite is actually as true as the other side. And so then it's just like, oh, present moment. That's all there is.
Yeah, it reminds me like in the beginning when I was kind of going along this path, there was the desire to just know what was true, damn it. It was like, it's like, well, what the fuck is really going on here? Because I don't seem to have a handle on anything. And everything seems so fleeting and ungraspable. It's like... And painful. And so it built up so much where it's like, I just want to know the truth. It's like, I just want to know what's really happening in myself. And then you get to this place where you start to realize that none of it's real. And it's still kind of like, well, what the fuck? But yet at the same time, I can let go of the conflict with the what the fuck. Because even that's not real. That is still arising in the present moment as an observation of a story. That the response is, what the fuck? But yet, I still don't exist as, a story of someone. And so, there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go.
Except for now.
Except for right now.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I still feel a slight irritation with that. Which is just reflective of my past few days.
Okay, so what's the irritation with, specifically?
The irritation...
What the truth is? Wanting to know the truth?
Well, the irritation is coming to terms with the truth while letting go of the tiny expectation that still feels like it wants to be in control. That still feels like it wants to figure it out so that it can be in control. As life continues to show me that I'm not. That I don't get to decide moment to moment what appears or what doesn't appear in the manifest world, or more accurately, what I'm able to do and what I'm not able to do. It's almost like saying, I'm terribly pissed off that I'm not 6'8" tall, so I could be a basketball player. And because I can't be that, I'm going to be pissed until I am that, but that'll never be the case. And so that's like the same situation with me now, is I can have these thoughts of, oh, I should be doing this or be doing that. And if I was doing that, then I would be who I need to be.
You should be a little bit taller so you could be a baller.
Yeah.
If you had a girl with a hat, you would call her.
Oh, who is that? Little Troy?
I have no idea.
I wish I was a baller. I wish I was a something. Yeah, I think that's Little Troy, but who knows?
Which again goes back to that wanting something that's not the now.
Yep.
And
that's
then
always
that
going to
disconnect.
create suffering.
Yeah.
That's always what it is.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and that's the invitation for me, too, is to release that wanting.
Yeah.
Because, again, the more I hold on to it, then the more painful it is.
Yeah. And even if it's just irritating, it's still, like, it doesn't feel good. So wanting the now. So,
okay, yeah. And so we've talked about before this flow of, like, the tide that goes in and out. Mm-hmm. The seasons, that are constantly changing. Mm-hmm. And then come back to themselves. And
in the moon.
In the moon. Yeah. And so just like within ourselves, there's the same kind of flow.
Yeah.
And really, the story about the flow is much more disheartening than the actual flow. Mm-hmm. Because it's just like, wintertime and summertime. Life doesn't care that you argue with wintertime. Mm-hmm. It still needs to have wintertime.
Yeah. It's still going to snow, even if you're mad at it.
Exactly.
You want summertime.
And so within ourselves, there are always going to be this movement. But it's the letting go of the idea that it should be other than what it is. And, I even forgot where I was going with that.
Yeah, the fighting against... Yeah, we talked about this yesterday about how, especially in spiritual terms, we feel like it's always supposed to be sunny. Or we're supposed to be the sun and only light. And we're light workers and we're love and joy and nothing else. But that's not... That is a part of the truth, that we are light and love, and that's all the foundation. But as a human, we have these experiences of the sadness and the joy and these cycles that are more like the tides or the moon. Yeah. And so being okay with whether you're a full moon or a new moon, like learning to enjoy the experience of the changes and the seasons and the cycles. And again, going back to being in the now and enjoying whatever is in the now without fighting and resisting.
Yeah, I see that there's always there's also the recognition of the equality in the tides, in the low tide and the high tide.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the lesson as well, is to come to a space where we're not leaning towards one or leaning towards another.
Or wanting one or the other. Yeah.
Right. We're just completely surrendering to life.
Yeah.
And letting life do what it needs to do. But I see a subtle contradiction there with a lot of teaching that says we should be able to dictate how we feel or be in charge of our own feelings, which to a certain degree I can see some relevance.
What about accepting your feelings?
Yeah.
Because and what we're saying is saying that would be the goal, kind of, is accepting the now and not fighting. Is that even the goal? Or does it even matter?
Well, see, and that's part of it, because whether the personality self accepts it or not, life has already accepted it. Yeah. It's already allowed it. Yeah. And so it seems like for me maybe a more sincere question is, can I go with this? Mm-hmm. Can I trust in this? And it's almost like life tries to piss you off in a way.
Yeah.
So that it demands a trust in life. It's almost like the concept of God being a jealous God, because God is all there is. Mm-hmm. And so in appearances, it seems like he's, jealous, but really it's all there is. Mm-hmm. And so it demands your attention. Because it's kind of like love. If love is all there is, then love demands love. Mm-hmm. But it's not like a vindictive thing. It's just, that's all there is.
Yeah. So then there's not even a choice.
Yeah.
So, and it's demanding itself, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
It's this, again, like circular, paradoxical.
Yeah, which points back to the only thing that there is to do is chill the fuck out.
Yeah. In the present moment.
In the present moment.
So I like that, though, because, I guess what we're trying to do is figure out what it is that you're supposed to do, which we've already established that there is no should, and, we shouldn't be doing anything. But if we're trying to give ourselves something to do, it would be what? Like trust the present moment or accept whatever is?
What comes to me as you ask that is to recognize the insanity of our argument with the present moment.
Yeah, okay.
Because it's already accepted, it's already embraced, but there's some voice in the mind that's arguing. Mm-hmm. And the argument is the source of the suffering.
Yes.
And so what is it within me that feels like this is unlovable? Mm-hmm. Ooh, I like that. That hit some for me. What is it about this situation that I feel is so unworthy of love? Well, it doesn't match.
That's a good question.
It doesn't match my expectation. It doesn't match my judgment, because my whole life I've been told that such and such is okay and is not okay.
Yeah.
This makes you less than, this makes you more of. And so there's the subtle play of conditioning that says someone that's productive is more lovable than someone who's not. You know.
Or it's right or wrong.
Yeah, or it's right or wrong. And I needed to be on the right side.
Yeah.
And so it's always the subtle voice of this person that we think that we are. And I find for myself, this is what it always comes back to, is just recognizing, well, again, the mind game is bullshit. And in that mind game is the story of who we are. And so all suffering is rooted in the idea of who I am. And so if I want to be free, then I must be willing to give up who I think I am.
And to love it.
And to love it.
Like, what was the question again? What is it about the situation that I feel is unworthy of love?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if that was it, but that sounds fantastic.
We'll listen to it after we're done. Write it down.
What is it that I'm arguing with? What is it that I find so unloving about this? And again, when we do that, it'll always point back to the story of self. And the awakening experience is to see that the story of self isn't real. And so in that moment, it's like, okay, you can rest in the truth that all is well and you're not really here. Or you can pick up the story and keep trying to be a person. But if you surrender the story, that means you give up every effort to be better than somebody else. You give up every effort to gain approval, acceptance.
Which that's what most people base everything on.
Yeah, everything.
Like their entire lives.
Yep.
So giving that up, then what do you have?
Nothing at all. Shit. Nothing at all. Which, of course, the beauty in that is that you can't lose nothing.
Nope.
And so, and that's what fear is the idea that something can be lost.
Yeah.
And so I can only be with fear if I'm holding on to something that's unreal. And so that's a great pointer. When you're with fear, it's an indication that you're holding on to something that's imaginary.
Yeah, that's interesting thought.
Yeah, it's amazing how that can just totally dictate the life of one.
Yeah, it's funny how powerful fear is when it's not. I mean, not anything.
Yeah. Well, I noticed that from my own experience. It's like the fear is the idea that I'm going to lose something. That what I've worked for, or what I've put energy into,
or what I have now,
or what I have now, that somehow I'm going to lose something that is going to make me unlovable. God, that rings so true for me right now. That's really beautiful, though, to be able to see that.
And then, you know, that Janis Joplin song, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. And what is there to gain with nothing to lose?
Exactly. There's nothing to gain. And
I would say maybe more joy. Expanding your own joy. Because when you're free of the fears, and when you're free of having anything to lose, then you can just be joy.
Well, yeah, it's like the moment you drop that, there's an element of joy that arises. Yeah. Just like a natural...
existing.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this has already been here.
Yeah.
That's the thing about the beauty of life is in the present moment of now, there is no problem. And so when you let go of the mental problem, you realize that there's nothing to be afraid of. There is no problem in right now. But again, it's so funny because it's so ass backwards to how we live our lives as human beings. Like, incredibly ass backwards.
It's the opposite. Because we feel all the time, we're in fear, and we're in fear of losing, and we think that we need to be gaining things, and we need to be doing. Which that's exactly what we're talking about, that you and I are trying to live, letting go of all of that. Like, all of the expectations we put on ourselves of what we should be doing to be a valuable person in society, and all of the fears that limit us from being our just most authentic present moment selves. Which, since it's ass backwards, it looks crazy to some people.
It does. Well, it even looks crazy to ourselves.
Yeah, it does.
Remember, we talked about that. It's like, wait, am I crazy here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I guess that's what you go through when you are going against everything.
Yeah.
It's like, what, is this right? Am I crazy?
Oh, and I can see for myself how there's this tiny fear that doesn't want other people to see my craziness. In my unwillingness to Well, it's like...
Or my doubt. I feel like I don't want people to see myself doubting myself.
Yeah, I see how... Because I feel like I live my life in such a way that demands a miracle. Mm-hmm. Because I don't feel like I can function in a certain way. It's like life is training me to trust in life and to give up on the illusion.
Yep.
But at the same time, I feel like in that trusting, I don't want people to see that I only trust in that, and to see that I'm incapable as a human being to live up to the expectation. Mm-hmm. Because I see that even as I do what I do now, there's the projection from others that I somehow have my shit together. Yeah. Which I think is fantastically comical, because I don't. Yeah. And I learn that more and more and more, that the moment I start thinking that I do, I really wish someone would just slap me. To remind
or life slaps you.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. Yeah. That's what happens. Is life does me a favor by throwing me in some hole or something that says no. Yeah. No, you're not the one. Life is the one.
And trust.
And trust. And trust in the nothing. Yeah. That's crazy.
Well, and that's kind of the question, is how do you do that? And for me, it's been just doing it. You kind of just have to go through it, and we keep doing it over and over, and making the leaps, and being kind of in need of a miracle, and the miracle is occurring, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, maybe this is how it actually works.
Well, we were talking about that yesterday on the hike, where it's like every fucking time life works out, and we're like, okay, I'll never doubt again. It's like, this time you convinced me. Yeah. And God, I swear I've had 1,000,001 of those moments. Yeah. And it seems like it happens every month too. Just the fact that I'm still here breathing, and it's like, wow, life did it again. I can't believe that I've
here. I've had that conversation so many times with life, or with the universe, or with myself, of like freaking out and not knowing how the hell that's going to work out, and then something amazing happens, and then I'm like, oh my God, I'm never going to doubt again, and I just have to remember this, and I will never doubt again, because I didn't know what was going to happen, and I had no options, and then magic happened, and it was insane and beautiful and wonderful and magical. But then the doubt always comes back.
Yeah. But the doubt always does come back to the person, the mentally created person. And so I find some sort of solace in that, is to see more and more that it's not really me doubting. It's the mind that's doubting. Yeah. And then I'm identifying with the story. Yeah. It's just like stepping into a movie theater and then getting all emotional over what you're watching on the screen. Yeah. Because you identify with it. And so there's a pattern in the mind that goes through this circle or this cycle of doubt, because that's just what it does. And the liberation is to wake up from the self that feels like that's who it is, and to surrender that self and just kind of laugh at the mind a little bit.
Or maybe that's just how it is, and then we're like the moon, and we are just meant to go through those cycles. Because I feel like I kind of think that I'm supposed to get to this point of always being the full moon and never going through the darkness of the doubt. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe it is just to go through those cycles of fullness and joy and knowing, and then going back into the darkness and the doubt and the illusion, and then coming out again, and then...
Well, yeah, because if that's what life is going through, and we have an argument with it, that's not really serving anything at all. Yeah. And it's like, if we have an argument with it, then it's a judgment. It's saying that the sun is more valuable than darkness. Yeah. And that's just clearly not true.
Yeah, and it should always be light out.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, if it's dark, and I have judgment... then it's just showing what is being held on to. And so what a perfect flow that would be, the light and the dark, so that it constantly puts us through a process or a fire that refines the truth.
It's like a fire of darkness. Yes. You go through the fire and the fear and the suffering of doubt, and then it shows you what you're hanging on to that's causing the doubt. Because the doubt, you're not doubting you were saying on your deepest levels. It's the mind and the fears and all that stuff that aren't true. Yeah. And so going through that cycle of doubt and darkness, like you're saying, shines the light on what it is to let go of. Yeah. God, that's so funny, because it's I can still see the scariness in it, but at the same time see the freedom in it. Yeah. But, and then what does it look like to let go? And I think that's just such an individual kind of... Yeah, I think it depends on the situation and the moment and where you're at and who's around you. And And it can be different ways of letting go or going through it. You know, sometimes it helps to talk through it. Sometimes it helps to just feel it and sit with it. Sometimes it helps to go hiking. Sometimes it helps to do this or that.
Yeah, and you'll just have to check in with the present moment to find out. Because again, it's like each moment is its own universe. It's its own world. So what we think we figure out now may not even be applicable, you know, in 15 moments from now.
Yeah.
So again, going back to trying to figure things out, I think that's a lot of what we're trying to do. That creates...
hold on to something. We're trying to hold on to that rope of sand.
If I can just get this one line of insight ingrained in my mind.
And never forget it.
And then never forget it.
And I can go through the dark without getting terrified or thinking I'm going to die.
Which, God, and again, such things can be helpful because I've written myself letters before, like from both sides of the spectrum, whether it's the night or the day, and to write letters to myself on the opposite side.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And it's like I wrote a blog post that might still be up on the tigmonk.com called An Emotional Letter to My Troubled Self. And it was when I was in a space of just really ecstatic joy, remembering the times when there was doubt. And so I just like wrote myself a letter of encouragement just to remind myself, you know, that all is well. It was really kind of like a sweet experience for myself. Not that I, you know, read it.
Right. Well, and it's almost like that movie Inception. Right? Is it Inception, the one with the dream levels?
Yeah.
And how they have their token and they're trying to hold on to their token to know if they're dreaming or awake and what the difference is. And it's like that. I feel like it's a very powerful metaphor for the actual experience of life, of like going through that darkness and trying to remember that the sun is going to come back. But you get to that point where it's so dark and you're like, is the sun coming back? I don't even know what the sun looks like anymore. And you forget, you know, and then it comes back and then you're like, oh, there's the sun.
And I think what allows the sun to come back out is our own honesty. Because the refining process, what I see it doing there is just drawing out a deeper honesty. Coming back to somewhat of a conclusion that I don't know what's right or wrong. I don't know what should happen. And kind of releasing that false knowing. And so out of that comes this deeper honesty, which is, I see kind of as the point, you know, the calibration of coming back to the truth. And because anytime we, you know, it's like you prop yourself up, life knocks you back down. And so then that's honest. You know, it's honest for life to say, no, you're not better than. No, you don't know how life should be. That's life's job. And
just cutting through those illusions that we do know. Yeah,
and so I think if there's a practical side to that of how can I, you know, process this or work with life, it's really a state of honesty, and sometimes not even a mental honesty. Because I find for myself, my own honesty right now is that I can't even articulate my honesty. It's coming from a completely different space than the mind's, you know, idea of what it is to be honest.
Yeah.
It's just more of like this energetic honesty.
Which is probably the only real honesty, because the all words are not real.
Yeah.
So
all the words are pointing to the deeper honesty. Oh my goodness. All right, we have, I don't know, 5 more minutes here. And then we're going to wrap up. Although I do feel like we covered some fantastic things.
Yeah. Today. Did we find any answers, though?
We didn't. It's all bullshit.
I think what I would like to remember is the thing about the sun and the moon. For me, that image is powerful. That the sun is kind of our true selves. You know, that we're radiant beings of light that can produce our own light. But our experience here on the planet is more like the cycles of the moon. And so we go through phases of darkness and through phases of light. And to learn to get comfortable with that and be okay with going through those phases.
Yeah.
Instead of feeling like we're supposed to be the sun all the time.
Yeah. Learning to go through without clinging towards the one side. And we talked about this before with the analogy of the story. The farmer, you know, he lost his horses, and the folks were like, oh, poor you. And he's like, I don't know, maybe. Yeah. And then he comes back with even more horses. I don't know. You'll have to find the story, but I don't want to tell it right now.
Okay. Yeah. Basically that the story never ends. So to say whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, we don't know if something's happening is really good or bad. And I can see that in my own experience where something will happen and then the idea of self wants to get all excited about it. And so even from my own space, it kind of reminds me to watch that movement that wants to get overly excited about some future potential that's relating to my story. That, it's working out this way. No, I don't really know that.
Yeah.
It might appear that way, but it's just appearances. That's going to change anyway.
Yeah.
And so ultimately it's going to go back to looking like it's not going to work out.
Yeah. Well, my goal right now is to enjoy the now as much as I can until I'm not enjoying it anymore, and then be okay with that too.
And we will continue to see what happens. And what happens is that life shows itself as beautiful.
Yeah.
Every time.
That's true.
High five.
High five.
Another fantastic episode. Spiritual bullshit. Thank you for joining us, and thanks, Maya, for holding space and let me lay on your couch with you.
Thanks, Tiger.
Yay. Aloha, and cheers to the beauty that you already are.
Bye.
You've been listening to Spiritual Bullshit with Tigmonk and Maya Lila. Learn more at tigmonk.com.